Good morning and welcome to the next edition of Free Agent. This is a podcast interview, and my mission is to share inspiring conversations with real people who took the leap into business ownership, franchising, and freedom. From corporate refugees and executives tired of the desk job to entrepreneurs and investors looking for more support in their business journey, this podcast aims to spotlight real people who stepped into the unknown, took control of their destiny, and became their own boss. My guest today is a man close to my heart. He is my husband, Peter J. Layton. If any of you want to look him up on LinkedIn, he's been a big deal in the world of finance. He went from being a trader, put himself through college in an MBA program, rose the ranks in Chicago circles, and then into New York and Wall Street. I would like to introduce Peter Layton. Welcome to the show.
Well, that's very kind of you. I like being here.
You have a very interesting background. Do you want to tell really quickly what's behind you?
Well, there's a lot of different things there. I get a lot of comments about the 85 Bears. That tells you how old I am. That was a big deal for once in my life. Not as much anymore, but that was still a good group of folks.
Where did the collection come from of what's behind you?
It was accumulated over decades, and it came from our home in Western Springs. And when we downsized, I got rid of most of it and kept a few items. And so these are some of the items I've kept. And the first 5 on the Hall of Fame is a painting I bought at the Hall of Fame. There's a picture of framed Abraham Lincoln, who's part of my series of most influential Americans. There's also one of George Washington you can't see, and Martin Luther King. And then there's my children when they were much younger. And there's a USC Notre Dame program from the 1940s and some baseball cards. And I think there's a picture of me playing rugby up there too. A lot of different things.
All very interesting elements of a very diverse man, dynamic, with a lot of things going on still. So, Pete, just for the sake of the audience, give a quick thumbnail sketch of your professional career and where it led you.
Okay. Well, during college, I worked for Merrill Lynch doing trade checking, and that led me to a job on the Chicago Board Options Exchange floor upon graduation, where I started helping people do program trading. It was when they were buying all the aspects of an index and then buying the options. And I helped them do the math and create strategies. Merrill Lynch ended up selling me and my firm, which made me look for a job where someone would pay for my MBA. So though I worked through my MBA, fortunately someone helped me with the tuition. And so I got my MBA from University of Chicago as well, as I worked for the Chicago Board Options Exchange as Director of Research. And upon graduation, I was approached by someone I had talked to a lot about pricing and theoretical values and the like, a gentleman named Blair Hull, and he asked if I would come and open his office in London. And so I became a trader on the London Stock Exchange, and we traded options, and we did it with electronics. Though it was in person. When I came back, I went to the trading floor in the CBOE. I traded in some of the largest equity pits, including IBM and General Motors. But I was still we're still thinking about valuation, and we realized we could actually buy baskets of volatility, not baskets of the actual stock, and sell the volatility or buy the volatility of the index and do a relative value trade. And that became very successful to a point we started doing a lot of forecasting on valuations of the different components in the pricing, and we started forecasting stock prices. And we found out that we could actually buy and sell stock effectively and make money because of our analysis. We weren't fundamental traders, we were high frequency stat arb traders. We were doing statistical arbitrage and very, very fast. So there's some books written about people like me that unfortunately I'm not named in them, which is good or bad. But our firm, Hull Trading, which I was a partner of, caught the eye of Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs liked all of our business, For me, they were very, very happy to bring in the high frequency statistical arbitrage trading into their firm. And my job there was to not only run that in the US, but roll out our technology globally. So I was doing the Chicago, New York, London, Frankfurt, Hong Kong, Tokyo circles tour, and trading operations around the globe. They made me a partner. I was thrilled with that. My entire career, I've been surrounded by curious people, and I've been hardworking people and entrepreneurial people. My jobs at Hull and Goldman were always to start new businesses. At Goldman, one of the beauties of a firm like that is you're never the smartest person in the room by a long shot. And so you might as well take advantage of it and get all their great ideas. They're also Hull and Goldman and everyone I touch is highly ethical people. And again, that's very important and meaningful to me. So I retired from Goldman Sachs. Throughout my career in Wall Street and LaSalle Street, a lot of entrepreneurs would come to us with ideas for investment. And so after Goldman, I said, well, I'm going to start saying yes to a few of these potential investments. And I did a few different deals, and some of them went very well and some of them didn't. But I wasn't putting in a lot of time, discipline in analyzing these deals, not like I was doing in my other career. And so I had this acquaintance named Susan Chamberlain, and who was very interested in. She was actually just finishing up her MBA in new entrepreneurial investment courses she was focusing in on. I'm from the University of Chicago, and I asked her if she would like to run my investment firm for me. It's just our money, it's your money, my money, and she curates and picks investments. And so all the investments I made before her are known as the BS investments because her name is Susan, before Susan. And all the investments after are the after Susan investments, and they are performing much better. She is very disciplined about understanding the background of the person. She's made up rules of investment. I kid her that she has a book in her she has not written yet. We call our mistakes, which we still do make them, our tuition. And we try to learn from them and not repeat them. So I can go into those rules if you care for me to, or at least some of them. I don't have them all written down. But then I also became a member of Hyde Park Angels, and Hyde Park Angels is an early stage group. It's got about 120 members. It's an invitation group. That's because the members are part of the process, and they want a diverse group of experts. These are people that have cashed out. They've had a liquidity event and they're entrepreneurial and they want to give back. They also want to continue to contribute themselves, but they also want to make money. And so we, that group, we look at investments in many, many different categories. But what happens is when an investment comes in, there's a group formed of members by the Hyde Park Angels staff, and we then look at the investment opportunity and give us more of a strategic overview and what would be our concerns. Then the Hyde Park Angel staff investigates those concerns with a deep dive, and then they come back and report, and we decide, is this an investable opportunity? And if it is, then it's offered by Hyde Park Angels to the entire membership, and they form an LLC. They always try to get a board seat or an observer seat. They stay very involved with reporting and benchmarking of the entrepreneur, and try to give a lot of strategic advice. Hyde Park Angels also has corporate partners. So these young entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs get a blanket of support, or maybe a structure of support is a better, don't want to mix my metaphors, that provide them accounting expertise, human resource expertise, what a board should look like, who should be your board advisors, what makes up a good board advisors, what is good governance. All these things so the entrepreneur can focus on the business. They're given best of or state-of-the-art support in all the other categories that they have to take advantage of. But it allows them not to worry about the business. And to give you a real example, why does that matter? Why does it matter to make sure you have that infrastructure and support from a lot of people that aren't in your line of business, but can help you with all the things you're not maybe expert at? During the February, March, and the COVID crisis, the government came up with this paycheck protection program. Hyde Park Angels staff took it upon themselves to go after every portfolio company and ask, are you interested in this? Let us help you get it. And so the entrepreneur had to worry about pivoting their business. They didn't have to worry about paperwork. That they had to fill out some of it, but it wasn't about, we already had a strong, Hyde Park Angels already has a strong banking relationship with Wintrust. And, Wintrust was very active in processing all this support. And that's the kind of, both at Hull, I was lucky, Goldman, I was lucky, Hyde Park Angels, you learn that when you look at these early stage companies, you've got to make sure you've got the foundation to build on. And you've got to have the foundation to give you the freedom to pivot if you need to pivot. And that foundation includes really good advice from a group of advisors that say, I tried that once. It didn't work out that well. You might want to do the slight variant on that. And that's incredibly important. So since the Hyde Park Angels event started almost simultaneously, I also started a new CTA, a commodity trading advisor. It's kind of almost a hedge fund in the world. And when I was heard that I was going to do this, the University of Wisconsin system reached out to me and asked, would you be interested in setting it up with us and in cooperation with us? And Chancellor Telfer at the time, gentleman is just phenomenal man. And I looked at him and in my very cynical Chicago manner, I said, well, what do you want? Chancellor Telfer said, what do you mean? And I said, what do you want? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, you want equity for this cooperation? What are you looking for? He said, no, I want my best professors to have a place to go and do the state-of-the-art finance. And I want my best students to get an opportunity that's here during the school year. And that's what I want. And that's great. So we started Blackthorne Capital Management, and we're located in Whitewater. And we just launched our fund. Our fund was launched by another firm I'm partners with, and that's called Efficient Capital Management. And we're off and running, and we're very excited about that. And my portfolio also includes our portfolio also includes one other interesting company, and that's called Tallgrass Group, which is made up of two different companies. One is Tallgrass Land Conservation, and one is Tallgrass Restoration. And we do land restoration. We put land back into pre-European settlement conditions. And you could say, how did you possibly get involved in that? And the answer is that I was way back when I was on the trading floor, getting spit on and elbowed and everything else. I didn't want to be in a crowd on the weekend. I wasn't going to ball games, even though we had access to the tickets. I started coming up to Wisconsin, and I first bought a place on the lake, and then I started saying, you know what, I would just like a nice big pastoral field. And I ended up buying a 50-acre farm, and I looked into doing restoration work. And we restored it to prairie. And at that time, part of my roots at Goldman Sachs is there's a big environmental following in Goldman Sachs. My former boss, Hank Paulson, headed up the Nature Conservancy. And I've gotten to know Wendy Paulson, and she's very involved as well. And my financial consultant at the time left her job, is now the head of the Nature Conservancy in Illinois. So there's this culture that was part of it. And so when I had my first farm, I was approached by the Audubon Society out of Madison, and they said, there's another farm that shouldn't be a farm. It's kettle moraine. It's rocky, sandy moraine, left over from a glacier. And it's right along a waterway that's an important bird area. And they asked if I would help them acquire it. And I did. But I ended up owning it, and then I put a conservation easement on it. And then I got to be known as, oh, you're the people that are nice to land. And so next thing I know, I've got people calling me saying, I don't need I can't afford to donate this land, but I would like it to be taken care of. And so we ended up buying a couple other properties. And before I buy a property, I'll look at it and say, how can I get my money back out of it? And one of them is, conservation easement was one way. You donate a conservation easement, you get a tax credit. The other way was wetland banking. And we created a wetland bank along the Rock River. And we were one of the first banks online when wetland banking started to be promoted here in Wisconsin again. And it's turned out to be a great success. And so that business has created a wetland banking business to help the restoration company that I ended up forming in the early 2000s, or actually the late 1990s, I guess, early 2000s. So the two businesses go together. So that's why we're farmers as well.
Country mouse, city mouse. You have gone from an illustrious professional career on Wall Street to being a gentleman farmer, and it's fun to be able to do both of those with you. So that's quite a CV, and I'm going to have to reel some of this back in time. When you were just leaving Goldman and starting to search for angel investments or investment opportunities, you've run into, as have I, a number of entrepreneurs who we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so go back to your rules of engagement with Warhawk and some of the parameters that have become important now for angel investing in order to profit from it and have a better security in aligning with the right kind of entrepreneur.
There are a lot of them, and if you don't mind, I'll explain why it's important as I talk about it. Is that all right?
Yeah.
So one of them is we have to admit that we're not expert in a lot of things that are now very, very good ideas. If you bring me a trading strategy, financial trading strategy, I will be able to pick it apart. I will say I'm expert in that regard, but I'm not an expert computer programmer, which is part of that business, right? And I'm not an expert in regulation, though I'm very involved in regulation. So you have to figure out, okay, where's your expertise stop? And be harsh on yourself because things change, or I have to be harsh on myself because the world changes. And you may not be the latest. If someone brought me a trading strategy in cryptocurrencies, I'm not heavily involved in trading cryptocurrencies. It's a different world than trading how I trade. So there are things that you have to say, okay, that's my expertise is here. I can pay attention. But if I don't have expertise in the other areas, what do I need to look for? We look for a lead investor. We look for someone else who's investing that knows that sector and knows it well and is going to bring cash because they believe in the idea. So we ride on someone else's coattails because of their expertise, but we also want to see the financial commitment because they're endorsing what's being done by this entrepreneur. Then we look for the other people on the cap table. We always ask for the cap table because often we see investment that investments that have kind of an incubation stage, and they have a friend and family stage, and then they have an angel stage. And we want to see who are those friends and family, or who are those people that joined on the angel stage. If we're one of them, who are the others? And we want to understand that they're high quality people, but they're also committed to supporting this investment going forward. In other words, you don't want to hit your Series A round when you're investing, and all of a sudden all your angel investors don't come with you. We want to invest with people that are committed to funding the next round because you don't want to starve an entrepreneur right when they need the money to expand because they proved their concept and they want to really go to market aggressively. Then we then look at what makes all those investors that they have, and it could be outside people as well. Who are their board advisors? Do they have a true functioning board? Because entrepreneurs tend to be younger. We're all entrepreneurs, but people that come to me tend to need money, so they tend to be younger. They haven't accumulated their fortunes yet. So they haven't seen the movies. They just haven't seen all the movies that they need to see to run a company. But you get people like me that have seen a lot of movies. When you bring a problem to them, we will tell you, well, we saw something similar. This is what happened. This is what we recommend you do. It doesn't mean the entrepreneur has to do it necessarily, but it's information. It's information that is so valuable.
And shoring up mistakes too, and helping them to move forward with confidence based on knowledge that you can share.
Yes, and also a good board will demand good reporting, good governance, transparency into what's going on, communication with the investor base. I see so many entrepreneurs shoot themselves in the foot by not keeping their current investors up to speed on what's going on. And I mean, it's crazy because when you hit your Series A, you think I'm going to give you any more money if you didn't keep me posted until the day before you're going to say, oh, I'm raising more money. I'd like to talk to you again. So that frustrates us a great deal. And so we do look for not only good boards, we also do look for entrepreneurs that are very good at communication. And because that's how you ask for help. And, you communicate. When I say communications, you say, this is where we are financially. This is where I could use my introductions from you. So I'm not on many boards, but I get our investment targets will call and say, do you know anybody who knows someone in this space or with this company? And odds are I do, if that's a big enough company. And happy to make the introductions, because if I can bring a cutting edge idea to a friend that's in a big company, that they have R&D departments trying to find these people. And if I can bring one to them, they're thrilled. In fact, I was just talking to the director of Walmart Labs, who was introduced to me by a friend. And we just started talking about what we know, who we know. And I asked him, what is his job? And his job is, I look at Walmart and I look at our needs. And then I look out in the world and try to find companies that can serve our need. And they tend to be smaller because we're looking for innovation. And he said that my job is to invest in them and help them bring to scale, because Walmart doesn't need small solutions. But we'll help bring a company to scale to service Walmart. And can you imagine what a gift that is to an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
And I asked him further, I said, well, why don't you just bring your own, invent ideas and shop? He said, because we're not an execution firm. We're not like an entrepreneur that's run a company and figure out how to bring this product or service to a larger company, right? We are really good supply chain. We're really good at keeping our prices low. That's what we do, but we're not going to roll out a new innovation. We need a company to do that for us, but we'll help bring them into scale so that they can service us. We'll coach them. And I just found that the greatest answer from a big company of why do entrepreneurs, why are they important? And why do companies want to hear from you and want to hear from you from a quality, somebody from like me who gives you a quality introduction, but I'm also putting my reputation on the line when I give you that introduction. So I'm vouching for what you're bringing as well. And it's a delight. And I know you do it as well. You make a lot of introductions because we're requested to, and it turns out very well.
It's the 6 degrees of separation in the world of networking. There are so many people who are aligned as we are. And going back to a very important word, innovation. You and I have been involved with Enactus for a number of years now. We have known Walmart and made some other great connections and relationships through that group. Talk about what you have learned being aligned with, and if anyone is listening and wants to look it up, it's enactus.org, enactus.org. It's a philanthropy that you and I have been involved with, but you've been involved with it for quite a while, all the way back to Goldman Sachs. Talk about the importance of students, innovation turning into entrepreneurial activity, and just how important innovation has become during the last 8 to 10 months with COVID.
Yes, it's my start with Enactus. I was a partner at Goldman Sachs. And Goldman had just gone public a couple of years before I joined them, or a year before I joined them. And they set up a foundation to support educational charities globally. And so because they're an investment bank and they have rigor in everything they do, they went and rated the best and found out who's the best education charities globally. And Enactus was one of them. It's called SIFE at the time, SIFE. And They
Which stood for Students in Free Enterprise.
right, and they wrote, the foundation wrote in a very nice check, and then they asked their partners, we're endorsing these 10 educational charities. We would like one partner to join each board of these charities, but you have to write your own check. You're not writing on our coattails. This because we're the business. I was on the business side. I have nothing to do with the foundation. They're separate, but we're aligned in our goals. And SIFE was located in Missouri. They were supported by the Walton Foundation and Walmart to a great deal. And Sam Walton was a big fan. And I joined the charity, and I saw the support that they had across the country from all these huge CPG firms, consumer packaged good firms, that I had never, I've bought and sold their shares of stock for a long time, but I didn't know anything about this world. And then I saw the support of what this charity did was it formed Enactus teams, or supported the formation of Enactus teams on university campuses across the country and now globally. And the idea is for students to identify problems in their world. And that could be in their community, it could be at the university, it could be at the town across the street, it could be at where they do their service tours around the globe. They can define a need, and then they have to explain why is this need relevant? And then they have to create a solution that will be sustainable to solve that problem. And so they find the problem, they identify a strategy, they implement a system, and they implement the infrastructure to support that system going forward. The charity is involved with not only supporting, making sure there's campus leadership for these programs through the academics, but also then they run contests or competitions where these students come and report on what did they do, what kind of impact did they have, and how was it sustainable. And every time I'm at one of those competitions, I am just blown away by the solutions, the problems that you don't know about because they're not in your neighborhood, but the solutions and the creativity of these solutions are just astounding. And then for these young people, typically young people, 18 to 25, go out and find expertise to help them. They find the university professors that can help them design if they have to build something, or they find someone who has the knowledge base, or they find someone who can help them with marketing or accounting, and they get the assistance, or they write a grant request to one of the corporate members of Enactus, and ask if, hey, could you help support us in this regard? And it's just a wonderful charity. When people ask me about why did I join, I said because it's a charity that it's all about teaching a man to fish. It is not about buying fish and giving them away, and that's good by me. So I love supporting charities like that.
And so one of the best elements coming into 2020 is that these young students who are, well, their programs typically are addressing the United Nations top 17 initiatives, right? For clean air, clean water, food supply. So they're addressing poverty, safety, et cetera. And so as we've seen over the years, some of the most creative solutions to sanitation are coming out of India. They're coming out of countries where there's a true problem with sanitation. The best solutions aren't necessarily coming out of a first world country. They're coming from some of the third world countries that really have to rely on innovation at a completely different level than what we have available to us in the UK or the US. So give an example, because we've got a lot of them, but give an example of a student-led solution that created an income opportunity, and how, as young entrepreneurs, they have created a sustainable solution.
Yeah, one of those goals also is living wage for people, and this is an old story. Before Enactus adopted the guidelines of the UN goals. I was in Berlin judging, and this is when we were still doing in-person judging, so it was a little while ago, but not too long ago. And a team from Africa had two main projects. One was helping design a very cost-effective sewage and water runoff removal process from their market, their local market, because the food was they were having a problem with bacteria and the like. But the solution I'd like to speak more to it's just a great example of, unless you live there, you don't know. You can go out and get knowledge from the world, but and you can implement it, but there's no way I would have come up with a solution. And they had a real problem because they had a lot of widows in their community from the AIDS epidemic. And these women were really struggling making a living. And so they looked at what would the opportunities be to really rise these women out of poverty and give them a way to live sustainably. And they decided that if they could get them in the poultry business, they would produce food for themselves and their eggs, but they could also then sell the poultry. And so they don't need incubators there. Heat is not the issue. And so they worked with a university professor, and they came up with this solution that was just mind-boggling. They first got people to donate materials to weave baskets. And then they would have sessions where the women learned how to weave, if they didn't already know. And they would weave 4 different size baskets, a small one, and then up in size. And then they were able to get fertilized eggs. And what the women would do is they would put the eggs under the smallest basket to begin with. And as the chicks hatched, they scurry them into the middle basket. And that protected the chicks from the heat and also from predators. And then when they got a little bigger, they went to the 3rd basket and then the 4th basket. And then they were big enough to outrun the predators. And then they would sell them or do something else with the chickens. It was a phenomenal idea, but they said, but I bet you didn't know this about our culture. It's illegal for a single woman to own a rooster.
Yep.
And so
how to get fertilized eggs.
How did you figure this out? So they actually formed this co-op, and the women all put a little money in this co-op so that they could hire this man who could own the roosters and drive them from farm to farm to farm, or to residence to residence to residence. These women not only went out above the poverty level in their community, they went 5 times out of the poverty level. And that is one of my favorite stories to tell, because there's not a soul on earth except those people in that community that could have figured that out to help women in a very sustainable, meaningful way.
In a country where women are second-class citizens, once the husband is gone, they really are relegated to poverty. And so this is not uncommon in the world still, but the stories that we hear from Enactus are really quite amazing. The years now that you have been away from the corporate paycheck, you have been a free agent. Are there elements, just in thinking about the life that we live now, what are your favorite elements about being self-employed?
The intellectual stimulation is amazing to me. And my interaction in the communities that we've created from our different activities, I rely on all the time. I was talking to Walmart Labs because our friend introduced me to him. He said, "You two should know each other." And now we're helping each other. I find that just tremendous and very important. I also like being exposed to new ideas, and the early stage investing is a phenomenal way to be exposed to new ideas and start thinking strategically. We spend a lot of time introducing one early stage company to another, because often they have complementary products or they have customer overlap.
Yeah, creating synergies.
Yeah, and again, entrepreneurs, that's not easy for an entrepreneur. It's easier for me to make those introductions. And then it becomes self-evident to the people around. What I do miss is my network is more disparate than it was in a corporate setting. When I was at Goldman, you need a resource. You just turn around. The expertise is right there. So since I've left, the networking and nurturing your network and joining more networks so you can have access to all the expertise you need when you need it is really important. And so I've enjoyed it more now since I've spent the time to mature my network rather than just turn around or fly to New York and go to company headquarters and say, I really need this, this, and this. And, you know, they packed it up in a box and gave it to me or sent it home in my head or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's made it easier. And also for any young entrepreneurs in general, never underestimate people's willingness to help you. If you've got moral character, intellectual honesty, you're transparent, you've preserved your reputation, precedes you, people will help you and do amazing things for you. And most of them will do it on a pay it forward basis. I mean, they're not looking for something back from you today, but there's an expectation in our environment, the circles we travel. Well, we know you're going to help someone down the road. And that's all it takes. And I really encourage people to ask for help and ask for resources. And like I said, if you check all the boxes and you're forthright and you have rigor in your life and you have a good idea and you have work ethic, people will help you.
This has been a great tutorial for the audience as they consider their entrepreneurial leanings and how to go about nurturing their idea and getting some financial advice as well as directional advice. I think you and I have, since the start of COVID, done a great pivot into the virtual world. And I think the habit that you and I have both embraced is leveraging the network, but inviting people to connect and that willingness of our mutual networks to support entrepreneurs and give them free advice. It is what they pay for. Or it's worth what they pay for. It's free advice, but we have a high quality group of connections that we are willing to share. And for anyone who has not embraced the world of networking, it's so much easier today because of this virtual format that we're in. And I think that one of the nicest freedoms we have had since the start of COVID is going back to your investment in land. I'm looking out my window at 230 acres of beautiful prairie property, and there's not a virus to be found up here. So you have created an absolutely magical escape for the two of us in COVID. And I would like to invite you to come back, Pete, for another episode or two, because I think what we got today is your CV, but I'd really like to do a deeper dive next time into some of the entrepreneurial projects we've been involved in and really drill down into the personality traits and the skill sets of an entrepreneur and how they need to look beyond themselves in order to attract talent, to support their business, but also to enable them to take off their blinders or put them back on as they're growing their business. Also, you and I have identified a few different business concepts that look like franchises and talk about how that type of business development differs from an entrepreneur who's going about the business of leveraging money. It's different in the world of franchising. So if you'd be agreeable to that, then we can wrap up today's session and look forward to the next one.
With one last comment as your teaser, yes, I'm very agreeable to that, but I was just on a call before this interview, and I was talking to the gentleman about franchising and what you do, and he was very involved in helping franchises develop their business as well, and so he's interested in meeting you. But I confessed to him that I've been in the capital markets world my entire career, and until we met, I didn't realize that part of the cap table is franchise. And I now describe it as when the person running the company is as important as the capital to get the company going, then you're probably thinking about a franchise. That's my simple way of understanding how what you do differs from what I do and why it's so important. So thanks for what you do.
All right. Well, it's a mutual admiration society, which is a good thing. You're my favorite, honey. So we'll wrap this one up today. If anyone wants to find Pete, he is Peter J. Layton, Layton, on LinkedIn, and you can read more about his background there. But plan for another event where we will get back together again and talk further about the world of entrepreneurial activity and finding success. So have a great day, Pete, and I will look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you.